I tell people about Mark all the time because for me, I thought it was the greatest. It was truly the greatest experience I've had in a long time. And so I sing his praises. It was awesome. He's right. Seeing it in person is much better than seeing it on YouTube, but you at least get a hint. You know,
right.
So it's cool. It's really cool.
If what you say is correct there, Cindy, the Lord is answering our prayers to bring people into worship, to see Jesus in a different way. That's what we're all about.
The thing is, and I think you said the key right there, Mark, is it's worship, and people don't realize the different types of ways that you can worship. You know, we're so caught up in the traditional worship, you know, or just music worship, and we don't think about, you know, the remainder of our senses, you know, and how we can fully worship God in all kinds of different ways. And he just grabs hold of it and takes in all your senses. I mean, it's really worship. It is.
Well, the visual aspect of what we bring is kind of new and it's kind of different. The church really hasn't embraced that very much yet, and I hope they will. I hope that what we're doing just kind of comes commonplace around the country with artists stepping forth and saying, hey, I can create something visually that will be enhanced by some really good praise music and all directed towards bringing people into an atmosphere of worship. That's what we're really all about.
Yeah.
Amen. And I have to add this. It's funny because Cindy went to your show, and after this program, she's texting me like crazy and calls me, look, Scott, you have got to check out Mark Eckel. I'm like, who's Mark Eckel? What are you talking about? She says, no, you have to. You have to go check this out right now. No waiting. And so I did. And I was like, well, yeah, I was like, well, he's a painter. How am I gonna get across to my listening audience? He's painting, Cindy. But it is truly pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I was texting you, and I got him out in the hallway in between services because we did 2 services, and he painted both, and I nailed him out in the hallway and said, here's my card. Contact me.
So he got paint all over it and couldn't read the numbers, but that was all right.
One of the biggest questions we get as a ministry, when I paint, I wear a black hood, which covers my head. Yeah. And I come out backwards, so you never really see my face. And people say, why do you do that? You look like the Christian Grim Reaper. I don't get it.
That's one of my questions. You beat me to it.
Yeah. And so our statement with that as a ministry is it's really has nothing to do with the painter. If you're focusing on the painter and what the painter is doing, you're missing the big picture. It's all about Jesus. It has to be about Jesus, or we need to get out of the ministry.
And I totally got that when you came out that way. And here's the other thing, and I don't know if all of the backgrounds you paint on I don't think are black, but in our church you painted on a black background. And so after a few minutes, you didn't see Mark anymore. You just saw the painting happening because he just kind of blended into the background of it. And so he's right. It wasn't focused on him. It was all Christ-centered, and that made it really especially cool.
Yeah. We have even when we have introductions, sometimes the church will introduce what we do. I say, you're not allowed to say my name, because once you do that, the focus is in the wrong spot. You need to keep the focus on Christ. If you're going to celebrate the painter, then we're in the wrong spot, because we don't do that. We don't celebrate anybody but Christ. One of the books that I'm writing right now is called It's Not About Me, an autobiography. And it's really the stories of our ministry and what God has done through us, not about us, but through us, to bring people into an atmosphere of worship and evangelism.
It's powerful. And I've got a couple more specific questions about, speaking of the black garment that you have going on, how many of those do you go through a year? I mean, you're slinging paint and all kinds of stuff. You got to be moving through those things.
Well, if money is a little low, I keep wearing the ones I've got. But typically, if they're pretty black from the back, I'll keep wearing them.
Good enough.
Sometimes I'll take a big black marker and just color over the paint that we got on there and just walk out and do it.
What is the media, Mark? I know that you use chalk. because you write the words. We're going to talk about that in a second, that portion of it. Is it chalk and paint? I mean, it seems like when you're throwing your that's not a good word. When you're placing your work up on this screen, there's powder flying. Tell us a little bit about how that whole thing works.
Okay. Well, the words. A lot of our presentations have a dramatic reading at the front, and what that does, it kind of sets a tone for the whole idea of the painting, and it also extends the presentation, so it's not a real short deal. But I'll write words on there in sidewalk chalk.
Okay.
It helps the visual. You talk, for instance, our above all painting, we talk about different attributes of Christ and who He is. And so to write some of those up as they're being rattled off, it kind of is a lasting factor to it. I can see that. It's sticking with me. We have a painting called The Sacrifice, which is basically a crucifixion scene. And we start out with a reading called Guilty as Sin, and it talks about just the depravity of mankind and basically focuses on one man and his sinfulness. And as his sinfulness is being described, the different sins that he has committed are written up on the wall. And then there's a turning point where it says, when he looked at him, this one man is looking at this sinful man. When he looked at him, his son, and what it is, it's God the Father looking at his son who is bearing our sins. When he looked at you, when he looked at him, he looked at you, and he looked at me too. So we write sins on a wall, and then we paint a picture of Christ over those words, over the sins, and then the blood of Christ, very symbolically, covers those sins. And that's the message of that painting. Through the blood of Christ, our sins are covered. The portion that we do with the chalk is very symbolic, and it's there to kind of help, once the list kind of flies by, you can still see it. It's still there.
Right.
So it's kind of a lasting reminder.